Hey, what's the deal, Panther fans? It's your boy, the Professor, a.k.a. Tony Dunn. The music cut off so suddenly, but it's okay because we're here to bring you the latest Panthers news and opinion from the fan perspective. And I'm doing it here with my best bud, Joe Riolano. How's it going, Joe?
Tony, it's a beautiful night here in Charleston. The temperature's cool, there's no humidity, and I'm ready to talk about some Carolina Panthers.
Fantastic. Tonight's show is Toss Cam That Lombardi, episode 17.21. We're going to talk about Cam Newton tossing the football for the first time since his shoulder injury. We've got a lot to talk about, whether it be Greg Olsen's contract, Derek Carr's contract, Florio's criticism of the Panthers organization, or even Dave Gettleman's time where he said it's time for the Panthers receiver. Their time is now. But we also have a special guest tonight from VikingsTerritory.com, BJ Rydell, at Robert Rydell, host of the About the Labor, a Minnesota Vikings podcast, where later on we're going to be talking about continuing our series, Joey, of looking at Panthers opponents and what they've done in the offseason, continuing to find out if what I guess not only have they've done in the draft, but also what they've done in free agency. But this tonight, Joe, is a cool show because there's been so much exchange between the Minnesota Vikings. I know that we joke that Buffalo is really the team that is, I guess, Carolina North. But in many ways, we've got more of a relationship, I feel like, with Minnesota, where we've swapped so many players over the last couple of years. Well, this year specifically.
Mm-hmm. You're right. We've seen former Panthers come back to Carolina from Minnesota. We've picked up a few free agents from Minnesota. And that's funny when you think about it. Just the NFC North in general. Because Peppers was with the Bears.
Yeah, good point.
He went to the Bay, and now he's back in Carolina.
Yeah, and I mean, even we're talking Greg Olson's contract, and there's still links to the North. Is that it always seems it goes back to that game, Joey, where they blocked two on us. Do you remember where they blocked two field goals or punts or whatever just 2 years ago, and it was like negative 25, and it was the downward spiral. This was 3 years ago. So there's always a lot of ties. Look, there's a lot of people already in the YouTube chat room. Cody Lackney's there, the Batman, Owen Silver, Shaked, Tin Tizzy. It's so great to have the grounds crew. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys, they keep it together. They bring it every week, and we appreciate that so much. And look, not only do they bring it each and every week, we thank everybody for listening to the show. We encourage you to go ahead and smash that like button if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Give us a share. Look, drop the video in a Panthers group. Drop the video somewhere where you know that friends who like the Carolina Panthers will like it, because I'm telling you, the C3 podcast is growing week in and week out, and we do it not because we are sharing it. It's because you guys are sharing it, and we appreciate it. So look, follow us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. You can find us at cat_chronicles on Twitter and Carolina Cat Chronicles on Facebook. And look, if you're listening here, look, it's on iTunes, Stitcher. Subscribe, write a review. That's one solid you can do us, is just giving the show a share to a friend, because every listener, every week we grow one by one by one by one. And we're going more and more, and it's really become a fun thing. And if you're interested in donating to the show, you can find the link to the Patreon account in the show notes or on the website, carolinacatchronicles.com. Joe, we're going to go ahead and get jumping in, and that is Cam Newton tossed the football for the first time since his shoulder surgery. He had a torn rotator cuff injury. Now, to go back to this is, look, Cam Newton has taken he's taken a beating his entire career, and we saw him get slammed. It's not strange for us to see us get slammed to the ground, but I swear last year that I saw him with that shoulder gingerly with that shoulder before the real injury occurred. And then in the Tampa Bay game late in the season, he is slammed to the turf pretty hard, I think on a run play out of bounds or something to that effect. And you could tell that was the moment that it was like, we can't ignore this anymore. I truly believe that there were symptoms and signs, maybe not of the tear, but of that shoulder being problematic before then. But he plays through that injury. 2 more games that were inconsequential, it seems like. And then later on, he gets then it comes back after the season's over, 3 weeks out, that the shoulder, that there is a partial tear or a real tear. They've been kind of clandestine with just how bad it really was. But he gets that repaired, and immediately people were worried, why didn't he not do that earlier? But now it looks like his recovery is going well. He tossed the ball this week for the first time 45 times, Joey. And when I say he tossed the ball, he may as well have thrown it underhand. They did it in the locker room in throws of 15, and they were no more than 20 feet. But
the longest throw?
Yeah, go ahead. How long was it?
I don't 10 know.
10 lockers. What do you think? The average locker has got to be no more than 2.5 feet.
Right. Maybe at most 3 feet.
3
at
feet.
Most.
So you're talking it's 25 to 30 feet he threw the ball.
Right.
Now, how many yards is that?
That is only about
10 yards.
3 yards. No, 9.
10 yards, right? So, 3
yards,
feet per yard.
8 to 10, somewhere in that area, yeah.
All right. So he threw a first down. First down in his recovery comes today. Comes this week. He got a first down in his recovery. But, Joey, I know that a lot. Look, you know what I thought was funny about this, and I almost iced up Bill Voth, and I love Bill Voth, so I'm not going to ice him up. But he made a joke about how it was ridiculous how everybody was clamoring to watch him throw 30 feet. But I wanted to point out to Bill Voth that the Panthers made a promo video out of it. Like they had a legit, like a real promo.
Multi-camera, black and white.
Yeah.
And to a soundtrack. There was a soundtrack to this. Now, Peter Schrager, funny guy, said that the throws weren't exactly impressive. They, because obviously he's indoors
and he was tossing it.
Tossing
he might as well have underhanded.
There's nothing impressive about it, but that the Panthers may win an Oscar for the cinematography.
Yes.
Because that's really what it was all about. It was not about the throwing, because you can barely call that throwing.
Right. Tin Tizzy says this was more for the fans, and I agree entirely. We ate it up. We put it on the website. Everybody wrote about it. But Bill did kind of try to make fun of us for being so excited, but they did make, like you said, a real production matter out of it. All right. Does Cam Newton physically tossing the ball help you, Joey, internally and mentally prepare for this year?
Well, I don't know how excited I am, but it does show that his rehabilitation is progressing, and it's progressing at the pace that they want it to. I read that if no hiccups occur, he's at the point where he will be ready to throw, fully make all his throws first day of training camp.
I don't think that's fantastic. I don't even need him to do that, right? We've seen him miss training camp before and do this, and not that those seasons were fantastic, but I think this is that physically seeing Cam Newton throw the ball helps a lot of people who were concerned beyond what probably was necessary. But you got to think this is that he is such a valuable commodity, right? Is that if you drove a Maserati and somebody backed into it, even if it was the littlest of scratch, you would get your butt out and be like looking at the bumper, inspecting it, looking at them all funny. And that's what Panther fans are. We're all been tense beyond necessity. You know, I mean, if this was a cornerback having this issue, would be like, okay, who cares? But if this is our gem, this is the jewel, this is the crown jewel of the organization. But I think this is that we've seen that, like you said, that the progress, all signs have been saying that the progress has been on schedule, ahead of schedule, good, because he has not been afraid of the cameras. And I feel like this, if there was really something shady going around, you wouldn't have seen the birthday video. You wouldn't have seen these kind of appearances, the kickball stuff, none of that.
You've been a hermit.
Yeah. And so I think that's good. While I do think I would say toss Cam. I mean, he did play toss with Vermillion, and that was it. But he talked about his still working on range of motion. You hear that term, and that is when you hear the term range of motion, you're really talking rehab terms. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what it is your shoulder works. His shoulder works. His arm works. It's about how comfortable it feels in that process. Mm-hmm. Can he stretch it out fully to where he wants to be? And it's still, there's still work to be done. But at the same time, very exciting. But I do want to call out the Panthers a little bit for that cinematography. All right. And making
that was funny. You mentioned the off-season surgery and the 3-month delay. I think from what I read in that same post that was accompanied with the video, they talked about exhausting all other options before cutting into a quarterback's shoulder, and the fact that, during the season, while he's playing, even though he probably didn't need to, while he was playing, there was so much inflammation, you're not going to be able to get a very accurate MRI.
Yeah, he talked about the swelling going down. Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And then once the off season hits, it's not being beat up, and the swelling goes down, and then you're able to see the degree and nature of the tear. And so I think that was a factor in the amount of time it took for them to get the surgery done. Because in a perfect world, season ended on a Sunday, Tuesday, you're in the hospital getting your surgery taken care of. But I think they would have went in there just guessing, as opposed to being able to see where and the degree of the tear and that kind of thing.
Right. All right. So good news from Cam, but still a lot to be done. But I am 100% positive. I feel great that this is not going to be a debilitating injury. Right now, is from all the things we've seen. And maybe I'm just trying to be optimistic. Maybe just the Panthers PR just worked on me, but I'm pretty sure he looks pretty strong and solid and good to go. Now let's move on to this. Is Dave Gettleman came out and said it's time, or at least that's what the title says for the web on the story on Panthers.com. It's time for Panthers wideouts. But when I look through the story, it says it's his term, it's his time. He's referring to Funchess.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that so? I thought that was slightly, I won't say misleading, but well, maybe. Ultimately, is that there's a lot of focus on the Carolina Panthers wide receivers this season. Kelvin Benjamin comes in. There's been a lot of discussion as being overweight, and he's slimmed down. Dave Gettleman has tried to do damage control. He says, "You tell me, how did he respond?" He's talking about him slimming down. And he said Kelvin's speed is vertical. It's different. He makes up for it a different way. But ultimately, here's the thing, is you got Kelvin Benjamin, who is coming off an injury, 2 years removed from an ACL tear. Not a down, well, down as in it wasn't the top of the top when it comes to the league. But,
Well, his production was down.
Yeah.
It wasn't like totally off from his rookie year, but it was down from his rookie year.
A lot of people on the YouTube chat room are saying we need to re-sign LeVar Ball and go 19-0. Josh Epperson, well done. Well done. Re-sign LeVar Ball and we will go 19-0. It's Abe Burns wants a shout out on Facebook. You got it, brother. Lots of people watching tonight. I'm very excited about this. But anyway, LeVar Ball was originally at one point a Panther. Before he became a basketball player. He was on the practice squad, I believe. So very cool. But all right, so some pressure coming in. I think here is that I'm just gonna go ahead. When it comes to, I'm not gonna really. There's not a lot to talk about here. I think when it comes to the Panthers wide receivers, is that there is a lot of competition and there's no standouts.
Right.
Is that you got Kelvin Benjamin, who a lot of people have been hard on, but at the same time, he's been he's been the guy that the Panthers are willing to put in there every play. You got Devin Funchess, who has all of this potential supposedly, but we haven't, and the Panthers organization now is trying to, I won't say take some blame, but yeah, Ron Rivera and Dave Gettleman saying we're not getting him enough targets. But at the same time, they go and get these two young, not two, they get Christian McCaffrey, who everybody's touting his value as being more than a running back. And then you get Curtis Samuel, too, who adds to the mix. And then you got all these other guys in the waiting, as in Kieris Garrett, hopefully. A lot of people think made some noise last year, making more noise. You got our boy Damiere Byrd, but you have no clear cuts. You got a lot of guys that are kind of around the same area, but it feels like the Panthers aren't really willing to take a risk either with some of those younger guys, or no names, should we say. So it's time. You know what? I'm going to say this, Gettleman. It's time for you guys to make a decision of ultimately where you think truly who you think is the real deal. Instead of stringing along. I feel like we're really stringing along a little bit. And this year without Ted Ginn, I think we can make that decision a little bit. I don't know.
You're right. I think you're right. They are sort of just, we need to get some guys that we say, here, this is your chance, get in the game, do something. Instead of switching them out and, find your guy, find your man.
Adam Sanders on YouTube says this: KB needs to be an absolute playmaker this year, or else he's a bust in my mind. I won't say bust, but it's time to make first round noise.
Right.
He's made noise. He has made noise. It's time to show that you can be the man. But I think for me, it's those other guys. And that is, are we really committing to anyone Or else it's just this. I feel like we're in wide receiver purgatory at times.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on from the wide receivers, let's talk Greg Olson contract. Greg Olson comes out and talks about, well, first of all, he was posed a question by Joe Person at minicamp saying that he has 2 years left on his deal. Is he interested in a new contract? Now, to explain why Joe Person asked this question is that Greg Olson is the seventh highest paid tight end. He's 31 years old. He's played since 2012 every game for the Panthers, and the last 3 seasons he's had 1,000 yards plus of receiving. He's been Cam's number 1 target, led the team in touchdowns most of that time.
And just to make this stat that you mentioned even more impressive. Yes, he's played every game for the Panthers since he's been a Panther. But his NFL career, he missed 1 game his rookie season and hasn't missed any since.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Impressive.
So, and all right, so he comes out, and this story really gets some legs when he goes on Adam Schefter, Get to Know Adam, or Know Him from Adam, whatever it is, Adam Schefter's podcast. And he doesn't need a plug from me because he makes a ton of money. But Adam Schefter, he had a good and Greg Olson comes on. It was a fantastic interview. It was a long interview, and he asked this, and it was really some timely questions. I don't know how they worked it out this way, or if it was just impromptu, but he asked him about his contract, and Greg Olson articulated that, look, my production, my consistency has been the best in the league. I mean, he came out and just said the best in the league. Not like I'm not number 2, I'm number 1 when it comes to what really happens.
How can you argue that with the numbers he puts up?
Yeah, I mean, the other guys missed too much time. Is that there's all of these other factors, but the reality is that Greg Olson has been the best tight end on the field, period, for the last 4 years. And then this story elevates, Joey, when they say, would you be
willing to
hold out? And now I think that, of course, the internet pushed it a little bit and said he does not deny it, because he didn't say, no, I will not hold out. But he said this, is that Greg Olson said right away that his contract was this was important to him, right? And that he truly believed that he should be paid among some of the top names. Joey, how do you feel about this at this moment, and what type of leverage does Greg Olson have?
Well, he said he wanted to be paid for where he fits on the totem pole of top tight ends. And I think he's fair to ask for that. I think he's way outplayed his contract. And he has leverage. For one, he's Cam's very favorite target since, I think, 2012, I would dare say. He's caught, Cam has thrown the ball to him. He's got the most attempts, the most yards, and the most touchdowns of any receiver on the Panther team. So that right there tells you he has leverage. Now, he is a very pro-team guy. So I think he just wants to talk to management, let them know how he feels, make sure that their thoughts are the same as his, knowing, hey, man, after this season, we'll definitely, get into some contract negotiation to work something out. As long as he feels that will happen, I think we can count on him this year.
Well, let me tell you, with Greg Olson, there's a couple of things you got to remember. Is number one, he's 31 years old. He's had 3 1,000-yard seasons in a row. Does he deserve the money? Certainly, right? But this is a real issue for the Carolina Panthers right now, because this is that you are trying to gamble at this moment is how much longer he's trying to get. Some people have used the term legacy contract, right? Is this is his last big deal. His
Mm-hmm.
or I won't say his last, but yeah, this is at where his stock is the highest at it can be.
Yeah.
It can't get any
Yes.
higher than this right now. And he mentioned this. He mentioned that potentially an injury could occur. So look, is that he's looking out and he's saying this is it's time for me to get mines, right? But at the same time, the Panthers, they ain't gonna want to pay him because they got 2 years left. Also though, is that what is there behind Greg Olson? You want to talk about real leverage here, Joe? Is that you got nothing. You got nothing. You got Ed Dixon and names that I can't even tell you. And I looked them up not too long ago.
Right.
And the point is that this is where business meets reality. But what I would say is that Greg Olson, like you said, he is a leader of this team. It is, like he says, is that it's time that it's compensate based on productivity, but also his role. I would really watch this closely, and I want to see how this negotiation goes because Dave Gettleman doesn't like to be pressured. At the same time, is that this is the time Greg Olson really has to push. He has to, and he deserves it, yes. But at the same time, this is money, and the organization's going to be tough. So we're going to come back, and we got 2 more topics to talk about towards the end of the show. We'll talk Derek Carr and Florio. But right now, we'd like to welcome, and we'll get into maybe even some Olsen, more Olsen contract towards the end of the show. Right now, we'd like to welcome BJ Reidel from VikingsTerritory.com, host of About the Labor, a Minnesota Vikings podcast. BJ, welcome to the C3 Carolina Panthers podcast.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Fantastic, man. Thank you. My name's Tony. I'm here with Joey, and we just chop up the latest Panthers news from the fan perspective. We brought you on to talk about the Minnesota Vikings for 2 reasons. One, we're playing you guys this year, and that we've been going through in the starving time of football.
Sure.
And looking at our people on our schedule and seeing what those teams are doing in the offseason, what they've done in free agency and the draft. But also the Vikings have a special spot in this podcast because we've switched so many players. So it's going to be a fun show. We got a lot of cool questions to ask you. So thanks a lot. And how you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here, guys. Always excited to talk Vikings football. And like you said, Carolina and Minnesota have some common ground there with quite a few guys, especially this most recent offseason. So should be fun. Excited to get going. And, yeah, it's been a good day.
Fantastic. All right. So right away, tell us this is overall, give us the synopsis of what the Minnesota Vikings have done in free agency, and then we'll get to the draft in just a moment. I know we all want to hear about Latavius Murray and things like that, but tell us, what's the feel of free agency and what was the strategy and what do you take away?
Sure. Obviously the main focus heading into free agency was to figure out a way to fix that offensive line, or at least kind of band-aid it with a couple bridge type players. The Vikings certainly accomplished that by bringing in Riley Reed from Detroit and Mike Remmers from you guys, obviously. In the process, also letting Matt Khalil walk to you guys as well, which I'm sure we'll get to. And on top of that, Latavius Murray comes in to bolster a backfield, which was arguably the worst rushing attack in Vikings history last season. He comes in, gives you a bruising back with 3 down potential that can block, which is another big thing given the weakness on the offensive line. So then you bring in a couple flyers, guys like Tone Jones, who fizzled out in Green Bay after kind of being positioned incorrectly, in my personal opinion, as an outside linebacker in their 3-4 scheme, as opposed to what he'll be doing now as a 3 technique in Minnesota's scheme, kind of rotating in and out with guys like Jaleel Johnson, who they brought in from the draft. So on top of that, there's Will Sutton as well, a guy from the Chicago Bears they brought in at defensive tackle. So for the most part, it was adding depth. But on top of that, the big focus was getting an offensive line that is more stable and give Sam Bradford more than 1 or 2 seconds next season. And, they accomplished that by getting the 2 bookend guys. Hopefully Mike Remmers isn't repeating what he did in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, too much in Minnesota. But with the exception to that, I felt like it was a pretty solid free agency and certainly an upgrade from what was the offensive line from last season.
Or what he did in 2016. You don't want to do that either. So it's not just the Super Bowl. It's just the Super Bowl since.
Remmer.
Sure.
Where's Remmers going to play, left or right side?
He'll be on the right side.
Okay. I think he's more effective there.
I do too. I agree with you completely that
you'll get better play from him on the right side. So I really think that was a good move for you guys. Riley Reef, another good pickup. Injuries were a really big part of were injuries a really big part of the problems on the offensive line last year?
Well, sure. Anytime you rotate in, I believe it was 6 offensive tackles in total, that's going to create issues with, continuity and chemistry and things like that. Bringing in a bunch of moving parts, it's always going to be a problem, of course. But that's not the only reason the Vikings have to blame for their offensive line woes last season. They're on top of, their projected starters being fairly mediocre. Their backups were just completely inept and not prepared for the situation. So that's on the Vikings for not being prepared in that way. But like I said, there are some things that you just can't control. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous seeing guys like Jake Long come in, play pretty well for 2 weeks, go out for the season. Andre Smith was another one. I mean, Matt Khalil, as you guys know, went down early. Phil Lodeholt quits before the season. All these different, kind of key pieces, with the exception to Alex Boone, who I think did miss about half a game or at least a full game with a concussion, and Joe Berger last season. The Vikings were just, all over the place in the offensive line.
All right, so here's so we got a lot of people in the YouTube chat right now who are so anti Mike Remmers because he sucked for the Panthers. And so he was, and let me say, when I say he sucked, he was awesome for what we asked him to do, as in an undrafted free agent to come in and play. But what stood out to me about this comments or these things is that, we talked last week with a Detroit Lions analyst, and very similar approach is that we had to get an offensive line. We had the worst. Well, their run game has always stunk since Barry Sanders, so it's not new. They're used to that part. But to them, the priority was on the offensive line. So what we got 2 teams, priority offensive line, and but Riley Reef comes from Detroit, right? And they're talking about upgrading their offense. And now, obviously, one player isn't the solution, the answer on an offensive line. There's a lot of continuity there. But truly, are these acquisitions, are they really going to make the line better? Or are they just the appearance of making the line better?
They're definitely going to make the line better. TJ Clemmings and Jeremiah Searles were probably, going back probably at least 50 years, the most inefficient pair of bookends in NFL history.
That's
right?
awesome.
The pressure percentage was off the cook. They had turnstiles out there for the large part of the season. I would argue that most Vikings fans would tell you that Jeremiah Searles and or TJ Clemmings is their least favorite offensive lineman in Vikings history. They were
in history. I
kid you not. It sounds like an exaggeration, I know, but that's really the feel here with those 2 guys, especially TJ Clemmings. He kind of takes the brunt of it, given that he was on the left side and in charge of that. In charge of the blind side for Sam Bradford, which he wasn't great at. So Riley Reef essentially comes in, and just his ability the fact that he's durable and consistent, staying healthy, giving a full 16 games on the left side is important in itself. I think that's an upgrade to what the Vikings did last season. And it's really not difficult to improve on what TJ Clemmings did last year. Like I said, maybe one of the worst individual seasons as a left tackle in recent memory here. Same goes to the right side. Mike Bremer's
is TJ Clemens a draft pick recently?
4th rounder from 2014.
What round? What round again?
4th round pick out of Pittsburgh.
Okay. I was thinking of another, but yeah, I mean, but still, so you got 2 in. I tell you one thing is we know in Carolina what happens when you got no tackles.
Sure.
And guess what? We don't got Sam Bradford. We got Cam Newton who can hold his own. He's big as can be. He can run around. It's impossible to deal with when you got that. Are there any? I'm just gonna go ahead and give you the inside tip on Mike Remmers. All right. And this is real. This is not like the exaggerative one where everybody's telling you like F you Remmers. Look, first of all, he shouldn't be playing left tackle. That's not fair. It's not fair to him to start a position that he can't succeed in. Can he play right tackle? Yes, he can. But I'm telling you, in week 12, he hits a wall. He gets tired around. He will play well for you for 1 through 12. But he gets around week 12, man, you start to see the play drop off. And maybe more, but he's been in the league for a minute. It's not like he's new, but he has been like not starting. But the Panthers asked a lot out of him. I hope you guys, I wish the best for him in so many ways, but I think just remember this, around week 12 or week 13, you're going to see a deterioration in play. That's my forecast there. How excited are you about Murray? Because I think that dude's a beast.
Yeah, I'm certainly very excited. Jerick McKinnon last season was putting a hole behind that offensive line that we've already been talking about here. But he doesn't offer the same type of skill set that Latavius Murray does, in that he's a smaller framed guy that, he's extremely strong with his upper body, but he's just not big enough to run between the tackles. So Latavius Murray gives the Vikings a guy that can run to the edge and kind of blow up off, to the outside. Like McKinnon can, but then he can also pound it up the middle too, which, bruising back with athleticism and kind of the burst to get to the second level and beyond. So, and you add that to Dalvin Cook, and you really think that you've got a nice 3-headed monster there. So I would say most Vikings fans will tell you they're very excited about Latavius Murray, potentially more excited about Dalvin Cook. But I think that, the tandem, the 3-headed monster that they're building, I think Vikings fans are excited to, it'll make a transition away from Adrian Peterson that much easier.
Yeah.
Joe, do you think? I think that while Dalvin Cook is exciting, right, because it's the new toy, I think Latavius Murray is where it's at.
I agree.
That guy is going to be
he's going to be your bell cow, and then Cook can come in and
mix it up.
Right, he's going to be the lightning to Murray's thunder, if you will.
Yeah, sure. And I think that Cook has got some substance to him, man. Is that like, while everybody tried to make him out to be small, it's not true. I mean, he's sturdy, right? But I think Murray is underrated. I think he got overlooked a little bit in Oakland, which is strange, but is that guy. I think I've seen him make a lot of plays and make out a lot of plays out of nothing in some ways. So that's my guy. I thought that the Panthers, he would have fit great on the Panthers, but every team wants every free agent, when they come out. Right. But I really think that he is. I know that a lot of pub is coming on Cook. But I think that Murray is going to be the guy there. We've got a question from one of our followers. Carlton Cohen asked this. Can you guys ask thoughts on Edmund Robinson, outside linebacker? He was a classmate of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Edmund Robinson has been a work in progress. He came into the league, I'm sure, as you know, as a pretty one-dimensional player, outstanding pass rusher off of the edge. And he can come, he can stand up as an outside linebacker as well, whether depending non-scheme independent. So he has the skill set. This year we'll kind of see. He's getting a lot more reps at OTAs, and with that position open, when the Vikings are on their base, they're primarily a nickel-based team, but when they are in that 4-3 look, Edmund Robinson figures to be a strong candidate to start opposite of Anthony Barr at the will linebacker position. So he's got some things he's got to work on. His coverage skills really need to improve for him to be a complete linebacker instead of just a situational play. But overall, I think a lot of Vikings fans are kind of hearing his name more often and checking out his ability and this talent that he has shown on field to date, and getting excited at least about his pass rushing skills and his potential as an overall outside linebacker to kind of replace Chad Greenway there.
Speaking of classmates, how much do you love Linval Joseph? Is he like the best thing ever in the whole world?
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Always smiley, a lot of fun to talk to. He's a really good dude.
He's an ECU Pirate. I'm a ECU Pirate. I live here in Greenville, North Carolina, so we love Linval Joseph. And I tell you, Mike Zimmer loves Linval Joseph, don't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was, I believe that was actually his first addition to the team when he signed on with the Vikings in 2014. It was either him or Captain Munnerlyn that came first. So he got that big plug in the middle of his defensive line.
And he talked about him being better than Geno Atkinson, I've heard.
I don't personally remember that comment, but I mean that's they're both very talented defensive tackles. In my opinion, they play two different positions, with Linval at that kind of that 1 or that 0 at the nose tackle spot, and Geno's more of a 3-tech speed rusher type. But Linval puts enough pressure on the quarterback to kind of put himself in the same conversation as Geno Atkins in terms of pass rushing talent. So overall, I would argue that Linval probably is the more complete defensive tackle.
That's him. High praise. High praise. It is. BJ, I wanted to ask, during OTAs, how did, and I guess rookie camp as well, how did Cook look?
I think that his burst was on display immediately. It seemed like his speed transitioned to the NFL almost instantaneously. So that was the immediate first thing that caught my eye with him. In terms of reps, he's getting the primary reps with Jerick McKinnon because Latavius Murray is still rehabbing injury. So he has had that look.
What's the injury again with Murray?
Something with his knee. I can't remember. He's going to be back for training camp though. Okay. So he's just missing organized team activities and kind of these mandatory camps they have throughout the month of June and July. So Dalvin Cook looked extremely good. Obviously, the thing about OTAs is you generally only see the good reps because you see these reps through the highlight videos that your team posts on Twitter or whatever it is. So you're not seeing the stuff that he made mistakes on, which you still have to wonder about his ability to carry the football given his fumbling issues. And kind of the way that he leaves the football out there for guys to strip it away from him. And his pass protection is still a major issue. He didn't have to do a whole lot of that at Florida State, and he's going to have to learn on the fly in Minnesota if he wants to see time. So that stuff wasn't on video, and that's stuff that Vikings fans will be looking at during actual training camp.
Nor are they tackling at this point either.
Right.
Or do they ever really in training camp? It seems like, but all right. So let's move on now to the NFL draft. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is the star there, but give us kind of the overview of what went down in the draft for the Minnesota Vikings and how that helped you guys get better.
Well, obviously, the Vikings draft essentially started last August when they traded that first-round pick to Philadelphia to bring in Sam Bradford. So Vikings fans tried to cope with that, losing their first-round pick by saying that Sam Bradford would have been the guy that they would have selected with that pick anyways. So obviously,
you poor people. Sorry.
Yeah. So with the second-round pick, it was Dalvin Cook, obviously at number 41. Vikings traded up when they saw him falling to get their blue-chip running back to replace Adrian Peterson. Come back immediately in the third round, get Pat Elflein, the center / guard from Ohio State, one of the most stable players, fundamentally sound, a guy that can come in and start right away to improve that offensive line. Then you bring in Jaleel Johnson at the top of the fourth round, a defensive tackle to replace potentially Sharif Floyd. If in the event that his freak incident does become career-ending, you've got an ultimate stud there. In the Iowa product that can kind of come in and work with Tom Johnson, Will Sutton, some of the other guys at that 3 technique spot. Then it starts getting a little bit interesting. Bring in Ben Gideon, the linebacker from Michigan. Then you get Rodney Atkins, the basically lightning in a bottle player that isn't going to catch the football. He's basically like a skinny version of Cordell Patterson in that he can't run routes. He's very electric when the ball is actually in his hands, but it's difficult to find ways to get him the football given his lack of polish and technique, I guess. So bring him in. They get Stacey Coley, wide receiver from Miami, who is kind of very different in that he's more of a slot guy that could potentially replace guys like Jarius Wright in the future. Elijah Lee, another linebacker from Kansas State, high potential, maybe a strong candidate to be, at least a practice squad guy, potentially a backup guy. Again, very high potential in the future. Maybe came out of school a little early. Then Jack Tojo from North Carolina State, very smart safety, probably practice squad destined. And then Odenegbo from Ifedi Odenegbo from Northwestern University, very one-dimensional pass rusher with a high pressure rate in college. He's going to have to improve his technique. Again, another guy that's destined for the practice squad. So a lot of different movement there. Most of the stuff happening on day 2 and day 3. Vikings made 9 picks in the 3rd day of the draft. So a lot of depth adds, and then obviously improve the offensive line with Elflein, improve the running game with Dalvin Cook, and then improve that defensive line that kind of loses Leo Johnson at the top of the 4th round.
Joey, they have 5 picks after number 170.
Yeah, they have a lot of lottery tickets there.
I'm going to tell you this, is you'd be lucky if one of those guys makes the team in the end, like that late. But speaking of, I've got one question. We got a fan question too, is this. My question is this, is it a referendum on Norv Turner that Cordell Patterson turned out to be nothing? Because is that Cordell Patterson? Is that Norv Turner? What is going on? How did you guys not make him more?
Well, some of it's on Cordell Patterson. Some of it is on kind of the offensive scheming stubbornness. So obviously when Cordell Patterson came in 2013, he was an electric stud in Bill Musgrave's offense. He's basically the Percy Harvin playmaker that the Vikings have been using 2 years prior before moving that pick. You had to manufacture touches for him, so it inherently kind of the hidden element of your offense where if he comes on the field, he's not capable of running a full route tree, so it telegraphs the play call immediately.
Why can they not? Why? I mean, at some point, is that not on the coaching staff where you can't get – why can't you get him better?
Why can't
you make it why is it that he can't run more route? You know what I'm saying? Like you said this, as soon as he comes on the field, he can't do these things, but you're talking 3 years into the league. Why isn't he improving in that component? I guess I'm saying.
It's tough to say. Obviously I would attribute some of it to kind of his lack of, if maybe he is working hard, but maybe he's working at the wrong things, or maybe he's kind of fallen into a habit and basically practicing the wrong thing over and over again. Big things for him were not understanding the playbook to its fullest, not knowing your route depth. For example, if he's expected to run a quick 7-yard slant and he runs it 9 yards deep, it automatically kind of gets him blanketed a little bit more by that zone. If it's, for example, a zone look over the middle. That kind of stuff right there is going to lose value. So the Vikings can
confidence from the
if he's been able to execute the basic play call, essentially a non-target, where you basically a decoy at that point, and the defense obviously can start focusing on guys like Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen who can move around and run routes at a very, very high level. But then, when Patterson comes walking out there, it's probably going to be a bubble screen. It's going to be some sort of manufactured touch, maybe a reverse, maybe some kind of weird I form stuff where you move into the backfield. It was telegraphing the play, and he just couldn't improve based off of teams figuring out what he wasn't able to do. Captain Mutterlin, in my opinion, week 6 in 2013, that exposed him because he couldn't handle press coverage. And Captain really beat him up this was the first time he was in Carolina, really beat him up at the line of scrimmage and redirected his routes. And from that point forward, Cordell Patterson, the receiver, kind of fell off the table there.
All right. I'm interested in here, one of the things that I've been wondering, a lot of people here, the Panther fans hate their offensive coordinator. And obviously it's because we had a down year, but 2 years ago nobody was saying that. But I mean, how do you question anybody when you're 15-1 in the regular season 2 years ago? But Norv Turner is a name that continually gets dropped among the Panther fan base, and I'm kind of wondering is his time past in some ways? Is he truly still that offensive genius? Or
that's kind of not some. I don't think offensive genius and kind of the ability to be innovative. I don't think you ever lose that trait. Sometimes you get stubborn and kind of stuck in your ways, which is what Norv Turner did in Minnesota. He tried to bring an Eric Coryell offense to a team that lacked downfield passing ability and efficient route runners. But for example, if he in the hypothetical where he went to Carolina, that Eric Coryell scheme where you're running deep and basically throwing it up and kind of just hoping your guy gets it. It's a lot of flood stuff, 3 wide receiver looks. You need a big tight end over the middle as your safety blanket. Obviously, you have that in Greg Olson, and Cam Newton can throw the ball 90 yards from his left knee. So
yeah, he can. Well,
it works on paper. It sounds very good because the downfield vertical attack is something that Cam has worked very well at. It essentially mitigates his inaccuracy over the middle. When he's kind of airmailing his targets, he's a little bit too hyped up. So that kind of stuff could be mitigated by a Norv Turner system. But at the same time, the continuity is very important, I think. When you have an offense in place, Cam Newton doesn't want to flip-flop into a different school of thought completely, potentially having a playbook that has different terminology, different language altogether. I think that hurts your offense more than anything. I think what you would hope for, in Carolina is that the offense builds on the mistakes from last year and improves off of that instead of starting from scratch with a guy like Norv Turner.
BJ is making way too much sense.
That has tremendously. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
I was gonna say BJ's making way too much sense. Way too much sense.
No, I think just what you said, BJ. One thing that has helped Cam Newton tremendously is he hasn't had multiple offensive coordinators.
Right.
In time with Carolina, he's had two. One who left after year 1, and then the other guy's been there since then.
Sure.
So I think that's a huge factor, and that's definitely not always the answer. Switching out coordinators.
Absolutely. Let me give you a prime example here. Obviously, when Sam Bradford comes to Minnesota, right, the first game he starts is at week 2 at home opener at US Bank Stadium against the Green Bay Packers, right? This is likely because of his history with Pat Shurmur. He was obviously a tight end coach at the time, but because he was familiar with his terminology, he was able to get himself prepared to put together a very strong performance in just 10 days. And that's an prime example of continuity and just kind of having a good feel for your offensive coordinator or a guy that you had worked with in the past. When you have that understanding, on a personal level, you're able to work together and get things done quicker. And so I think that kind of thing is important, and especially when you're making a transition from one offensive coordinator to another.
All right.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Joe.
What does the future hold for Mr. Bridgewater?
That's such an unfair question.
We like him.
Bridgewater.
We like him.
I feel like I love Teddy Bridgewater. He is he's everything everyone says about him. So it's been a roller coaster. I think he's getting closer to returning. It sounds like, but it's still really up in the air. This has been a question that I've been fielding for I want to say about 9 months. All over
has it gotten easier?
I'm able to sidestep it better now, I think, because I have more experience. But basically what I'm ramping up to give you the simple answer is I know as much as you do, man. I have no idea what the future holds for Teddy Bridgewater. Obviously, I hope that he gets back on the field because I do think that he is, everything that, everyone says he is. Great kid. It's an injury that he has worked his way through with a smile on his face. High energy dude that I'm sure at least 50% of Minnesota wants to see in their backfield at some point in the future here. So we all hope for the best, but kind of, again, we're Vikings fans. We also expect the worst.
God bless him, man. The guy that nobody gave a chance coming out of the draft, I feel like, which was the best talent, best college career out of all those dudes, and played the best
Absolutely.
in the NFL. And you cannot ask for a better character and better person than him. And we do wish him the best. We got some questions for you from some listeners. The first one is this: what can you tell us about Charles Johnson? We call him Little Money here in Carolina because we have a Charles Johnson who signed the biggest contract in Panthers history in 2008. Like, so we call him Little Money. Tell us about Little Money. What can we expect from him?
I can do that for you. Charles Johnson. So this is a guy that kind of burst on the scene Teddy Bridgewater's rookie season in 2014. He became a vertical downfield threat immediately, and that was kind of his exclusive role. So he come in a lot of 3 wide receiver sets to get that 9 route going in Norv Turner's Air Coryell offense. So he's a guy that can get open with his feet because he is so quick. But at the same time, this is one of the worst catch in traffic wide receivers that I've personally ever done film work on. It seems like it's some sort of nervousy issue where when he goes up, he's afraid to get waxed. He never leaves his body open for contact, stretching his arms up over the top of his head in order to, that's something that he struggled with a ton. In my research, I have 1 contested reception over his Vikings career. So that's something that I think that he really struggles with. So in Carolina, like we just talked about, Cam Newton kind of throws guys high. For the most part, that's when he misses, he definitely misses high, and that's an area that Charles Johnson really struggles in. So personally, I don't really see the fit. I think that you guys are better off with players in the mold of Kelvin Benjamin, guys that are big frame dudes that can take helmets to the ribs all season long. Where Charles Johnson kind of just gets out of the way, and he's not a great contested catch receiver. That he's essentially been for 9 route exclusive, where you hope you get a one matchup on the outside, not versus press coverage, so he fails with that as well, and just hope that he beats him deep.
How is he after the catch then?
Great, excellent. But he's not the type of guy like Cordell Patterson where he has great field vision in small spaces with a lot of different guys. But if he's in the open field, this is an extremely fast player, very explosive. I believe he is close to 4.35 speed. His measurables also resemble Julio Jones, who I'm sure you guys know very well. So he does have the potential from a physical and athletic standpoint, but it's that mental block he's never gotten past the year he had in 2014. And Vikings fans were very optimistic initially, but he just never progressed into being a more complete wide receiver, and that's kind of why he found his way out of Minnesota after this year.
Joey, it sounds like he's got T-Rex arms.
Exactly.
Poor guy. Is that it seems he's always been a guy that I've been excited about because, for fantasy wise, I think I must have had him on my fantasy team that year that he blew it up. But it's been very quiet around him in all these OTAs and mini camps, and I believe he's nursing some sort of minor injury in the way that you hear him on the bike and things like this. And look, at this point, there's a lot of fast guys and there's a lot of guys on the team that can do those types of things. You better be out on the field getting it done. And not because, just because you bring somebody in on a 1-year deal doesn't mean you make, he's on the bubble right now. All right. Moving on to this is one question we had is, are you happy or sad that Matt Khalil is gone?
I try to be objective in my analysis, but I think Minnesota fans will tell you that they're happy. From a general standpoint, the stereotype is that all Vikings fans hated Matt Khalil. People like me, I still like the potential. I remember 2012 when he was one of the most dominant left tackles in the NFL before kind of the mental issues overcame him and just some of the injury stuff that seemed to really hurt his progression into becoming one of the better bookends in the NFL. He has the potential. He has the frame. He was a number 4 overall pick for a reason. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to become more durable. But overall, this is a player that could be – he has the talent, and you guys have the perfect medicine for what he's been dealing with in his brother. Playing alongside your brother and your older brother at that, a guy that he has spoken very highly of throughout his career, and a guy that's very important to his personal, I guess, development, maturation as a player, is Ryan. So if you need a confidence booster, playing alongside your brother is the perfect thing for a guy like Matt Khalil. So that's something that, if I'm a Panthers fan, I think about that. I'm a little bit more optimistic, but at the same time, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to get more fundamentally sound and more consistent with his fundamentals. And if he can get back to that 2012 form, man, I mean, left tackles, they cost a lot of money now. And that's, this is a guy that has very high potential. And, if he does back to that form, you guys will have found yourself a bargain. The Vikings fans will immediately be saying, why didn't we resign this guy?
Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by outside the physical injury, right? Because we know that he struggled with the hip injury.
Sure.
We know there's some other things that were kind of hidden, not hidden, but, that he's nursed along the way. So what were the struggles that he had outside of injury that you're talking about?
Footwork was a big one for me. He struggled with athletic edge rushers that could kind of bend around the edge there. So when he had to move his feet laterally to the outside, he wasn't always quick enough, and that allowed guys to beat him, either fake outside and beat him inside. That was an issue for him and kind of got him the turnstile reputation in Minnesota. Getting his hands up too slow and not getting good leverage on the pads. He has the frame and the size to really move defensive ends because he has so much natural power, but he doesn't always get his hands placed low enough on the pads to engage himself in that way and really set a good anchor. And that's something that he struggled with as well. So dealing with the combination of finesse and power, if you get a creative pass rusher out there, that was kind of a big issue for him. And then also on top of that, it's the big mental thing. So if he allows a sack 2 snaps into the game, his level of confidence, it seemed to be tangible almost, where you could watch him kind of fall apart at the seams as he failed to protect. And you see him, get a game where it could have just been, a 2 pressure 1 sack game instantly turns into like he had 4 sacks allowed with 9 pressures.
Yeah. Like he
falls off a cliff from a confidence standpoint. So
sounds like he's talking about Remmers.
Yeah.
Remmers.
Remmers
was all about that, right?
Remmers, his thing is not only does he get beat. Well, look, we're also unfairly judging him on this. Is that we made him play left tackle. And like one game he had 3 false starts in a row and 2 holdings or something like we were on the 5 and all of a sudden we found ourselves on the other side of the 50 because of Mike Remmers. But like I said, poor guy. I mean, it's not entirely his fault. Now, one of the things is that the Carolina Panthers bring in Matt Khalil as our decisive free agent. The one thing that our general manager has been afraid to address, right, is that we've tried to move a right tackle to the left tackle and say it was going to be okay. And Byron Bell, it was a disaster. Then we go and sign Michael Orr, who turned out to be pleasantly better than expected, but at the same time, very risky and short-term move. This time, the Panthers go out and put the money where it was needed and made a decisive move, like you said, and in a way that we think that he could prosper. My question to you on this is, one of the things that I've been raising over the last in defense of this signing is that it's very difficult to analyze any offensive line position as a player alone, but in the synergy of the offensive line. And you mentioned early in the show that the offensive line was an issue for you guys just in general, and that was something you're trying to work at. Do you think that Matt Khalil with more continuity around him can be a better player?
Absolutely. He certainly needs a better player flanking him to the right side, right? He had Brandon Fusco there, who was a guy who moved from the right side over to the left side in Minnesota, and that kind of hurt his career as well. You saw Brandon Fusco earn a 5-year extension, and then he switches over to the left side, and he's cut 2 years later.
Oh, ouch.
And he was the guy playing next to Matt Khalil for the majority of his career on the left side. And then they bring in Alex Boone to help Matt Khalil, and then Khalil obviously gets hurt last season. So, I think consistency around him, obviously that chemistry, just having Ryan, two guys over at the center position, I really want to emphasize how important I really think that is for Matt Cleo, because I really think this is a guy that he struggles with his confidence, and having Ryan to, kind of slap him on the butt and be like, it's cool, just work through it. And just having that ultimate kind of guidance for him. A guy that's, I think that's the biggest thing that he needed for his career. Truly. I think he needed that piece, that blood loyalty, a guy that he really trusts alongside him. And that's why he needed to get out of Minnesota. He just needed a new spot, in my opinion. It's a change of pace thing where he's lost his confidence in Minnesota, and he goes to Carolina, which in my personal opinion was the landing spot I projected for him. I thought it would be the best solution. And I think that if he is going to realize his potential as a number 4 overall pick, it's in Carolina, because it's just the perfect fit for his ability, his style, and just having his brother is just such a small, intangible piece that's going to pay dividends immediately.
Joe, how's that sound to you, brother?
At the same time, in addition to the proximity to his brother and the fact that they will be playing together, if you look at the other side of the ball, these non-injury related issues you discussed about, getting beat to the outside and just not lacking some of the physical skills or
the
not
technique too.
Right, his technique being an issue. He'll get a chance to really work on that when he goes up against, Julius Peppers every day in training camp, and going against Mario Addison. That'll be a real opportunity for him to go up against some quality defensive ends and work on those techniques.
In fairness, he's been going against 3 pretty good ones in Minnesota. So I don't really. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be. It's good that he's getting more strong, high ceiling pass rushers coming after him. But I think that Everson Griffin's been giving him all he can handle for the last couple of years here. Those guys had a very strong internal rivalry where they were actually betting, an extra rep or an extra lap or something like that on who could beat who on the play. So they had a very good rivalry, and it's good that it sounds like, from what you're saying, that he'll have the opportunity to continue that on the practice field in Carolina as well.
Right, and even Julius Peppers is a 16-year player.
Oh, sure.
So having seen so much of the league as he has, that'll be a really that'll be invaluable,
right?
For him to go to and ask questions and, try to see about doing things perhaps differently.
Absolutely. Julius Peppers is, you can't not learn something from that guy, right? I mean, He knows both the 4-3 and the 3-4 scheme. He knows how to rush with his hand in the dirt, standing up, drop back and coverage. He can do all these different things that can help your young players to improve their well-rounded skill set that can work in, multiple fronts on your defensive line and just become a more complete defense in that way. So Julius Peppers, again, another great ad for you guys, because he may not produce statistically just because he's getting old and he's kind of hit he's on the downward spiral, let's put it that way. But the stuff that he can bring is what Terrence Newman, for example, brought to the Vikings secondary when he came over.
That's an interesting player to bring up too, because Terrence Newman has been in the league just as long as Julius Peppers. I think they may have come in the same year,
2001. Yeah, both of them.
And those guys both were top. I've been reading a lot about that time, and there are a lot of acclaim on Terrence Newman coming into the league and his measurables. But I tell you, Mike Zimmer thinks the world of that guy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
they're like brothers almost.
Yeah.
The way they talk about each other, it's kind of like they're able to work without knowing that they're going to hurt the other one's feelings. You know what I'm saying? Like they could say something where like, I didn't like Mike's call on this one, or I didn't like how Terrence taught Xavier how to, do this motion or whatever it is. But it's like,
it's not antagonistic. It's not it's building. It's there.
Right. It's kind of competitive nature, right? Trying to like
complementary.
Right.
All right,
he's actually already been offered a coaching job in Minnesota when he retires.
Oh, so. That's amazing. All right, so last question is, tell us a little bit about Cap. Are you gonna first? We know a lot about Cap, but I mean, this is you bring him in as not a big free agent, but a solid free agent signing, and I think that he played well, and everything I've heard from Vikings fans is that he did what he was supposed to do in so many ways. So what do you think about Cap's departure, and how do you fill that void?
Well, first of all, Captain Munnerlyn is the #1 media favorite in Minnesota 2 years running.
Wow.
Everyone loves that guy. He was actually one of the first guys that I got a chance to talk to 2 years ago when I started doing reporting work like that. So I love his personality. I think the fighter is so much fun. The small man syndrome that he recognizes and sort of becomes his chip on his shoulder, his strength. I just love it. He's so candid, very fun to be around, a bona fide leader. He knows exactly how to get himself ready to play each and every week. The multidimensional skill set is, you think of him as strictly a niche slot corner, right? Which is exactly what he can do. He doesn't have the size to line up on the outside and run press that way, but his ability to rush off of the edge was just so dynamic with guys like Harrison Smith, who the Vikings could move around as well. Guys like Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks. So he was a focal point in that double A gap blitz, that 7 up front that got so much press early on in the Vikings season. So most people will tell you that the biggest loss for the Vikings this offseason was Captain Munnerlyn. First of all, because the locker room presence is invaluable. He's just a great dude and just so much fun to be around. And on top of that, the slot corner position wasn't resolved with the free agent solution. Essentially, they're hoping for progression from Mackenzie Alexander, the second-round pick that they got out of Clemson 2 years ago. Didn't see a whole lot of work at the slot spot last season, primarily outside, and I believe the 82 coverage reps he had, which were not great. He got burned by Alshon Jeffrey once. Vikings fans are it's difficult for them to be optimistic, given that they haven't seen greatness from Mackenzie Alexander early on in his career. But his Clemson tape leaves people hopeful. People are optimistic in that way. So that's the hope that they'll be able to fill Captain in that way. But it's big shoes to fill from a little man for sure.
Yeah, it's hard though for him to fill those shoes when he doesn't get the opportunity, But
Absolutely.
And so at some point you just got to put him in and see what can happen. The corner position is, I think, the most difficult position in the secondary to play, and I think that so many people underrate corners because they call them a nickel corner. And it's almost like a slight. But I actually, what we found is that finding a nickel corner that can do it all or do what is necessary is one of the hardest things to find. You can find almost physical attributes easier. So tell us, we haven't seen Captain Munnerlyn in a couple of years, has he still got it?
He's still the same guy, man. He's feisty off the line of scrimmage, uses his hands very well to knock receivers off their routes. He's got the personality to deal with bigger body receivers that line up in the slot, guys like Larry Fitzgerald, for example. He may not have the size to do it, but he'll certainly fight you for it. And he can come off the edge as a pass rusher. He had a very high pressure rate in his limited number of pass rushing snaps, but just his presence on the outside allowed the Vikings to do a lot of different things defensively because he can cover you in man, he can cover you in zone. He's a very smart player. And as you guys know, as the Vikings learned before Captain Munnerlyn even got to Minnesota playing against you guys, he's a playmaker. He's a guy that's going to strip sack. He's a guy that's going to pop that ball loose, fight for every extra yard, and if he gets the ball,
take it to the house.
Oh,
exactly. He's got the burners to get all the way to the end zone. So you guys got a playmaker at, in my opinion, a huge bargain for what he's worth and what he was worth with the Minnesota Vikings.
We are so happy to have him back. There's no doubt about that. I was reading an interview with the Panthers head trainer and strength and conditioning coach, and they said, pound for pound, Munnerlyn's the strongest guy in the team.
Jeez.
That he's a workout warrior.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good for him.
So
all right, so that's BJ Riddle, guys. BJ, tell them how they can find About the Labor podcast and where you do your work at.
Sure. Right now, I do reporting stuff for VikingsTerritory.com. You can find me there. Most of my work will be, a lot of news-related items as well as column stuff, analysis. I like to really break down a lot of film work, which is what the About the Labor podcast kind of predicates itself on. It's very Viking specific, so I don't know how many Carolina Panthers fans.
Oh no, we're always this is what we do. Let me tell you, you already got one subscriber right away. Because all we do is talk about our own team. We got to get the insight on some other teams, or else we just only know about our team.
Well, that's great to hear. So yeah, we like to do a lot of film work. We really push to get kind of this kind of stuff that you're not going to find in the box score. That's really our MO. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, VikingsTerritory.com, Stitcher, across the board. You can pretty much find us anywhere. About the Labor podcast is then on Twitter at VikingsATL Pod, and myself at Robert Reidell, Reidell. Then I do some Bleacher Report stuff every once in a while for columns and stuff, so you can check me out on there as well. So.
Fantastic, man.
I hope we're able to get you back on the week before the Panthers Vikings game during the regular season, so we can do sort of a preview of what will be coming up then. All right, BJ?
Absolutely. I'd love to work with you guys again. It's been a blast, and I look forward to the matchup with the Vikings and the Panthers upcoming season here.
That's
fantastic.
Right.
Thanks a lot. That's BJ Reidell. You can find him at Robert Reidell on Twitter. About the Labor podcast. Joe, boy, he brought it.
He did. What a great guest.
He brought it like dang. Cap did.
Right. I didn't want him to stop talking about the Vikings. He knew so much. He was
so it was crazy. All right, we got two last stories we do really want to quickly talk about, and then we get to our ice up picks. To me, I think this is petty on my part. I know. Derek Carr signs the biggest contract. He's the highest paid player in the NFL. He's the most recently signed quarterback, which means you're the most highest paid player, right? If you're the starting quarterback. I guess where I get the pettiness comes out of me is where is the narrative that Oakland overpaid Derek Carr? He wasn't worth it. He still has so much to prove. After we basically do the same thing for Cam, even later in his career, essentially, we see more. And we know the upside of Cam Newton is so. First of all, is his floor is Derek Carr. His ceiling is far beyond Carr. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry. I know this is
I think
me.
You say you're being petty, but there's a point there. You are right in making a point there. Why is it that way? Why is it that Derek Carr, who's not played as long as Cam has, who's had success, but he's not had the sustained success. And why?
He's had 1 year. 1 year. One winning season.
Why is it that nobody says something when he gets this big payday? But Cam earns it, year 5?
Yeah.
Is that when you paid him big?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was more into his career, and there was such a big fuss made over it, man. Just overpaid, not worth it.
This is, to me, it wasn't even, it was that, but it was also this, is that we haven't seen enough from Cam yet. It was because certainly Cam was coming off a year where he had his back broken. He had the ankle, this and that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was the year before, it was 2014. It was going into the 2015 season where he then becomes the MVP of the league, has the most phenomenal season, but we don't know that yet. And it was all of this. It was not only did the Panthers overpay, but they jumped too early. That they just felt pressure to sign the quarterback because without him, they don't know what's going on. Now, there's been some very, very minor people saying that Carr isn't worth this money. But here is, at the end of the day, is what you hear are things like this about Derek Carr, is that now he did do very well in controlling the narrative. Let's give him that credit. As he comes out and he says, I told my agent to make this deal so we can keep our stars. Right? So he gets ahead of this very clearly. But at the same time, the dude is going to make $85 million in the next 3 years. Right?
Wow.
And he's had one season where he's been now he's been good. I'm not trying to knock him at all. Right. I actually think he should get this. My problem is that, like, why are the voices so strong against Cam? It's not even that I want more voices against Derek Carr. I don't want more people saying that Derek Carr is overpaid and not worth it. I'm going to tell you this, is that the Oakland Raiders haven't had a quarterback in forever. And Derek Carr has been the one single close answer you've had at that. So this is what you have to do in the NFL. But not only did the Panthers have to do that, but we have a star. You know, we got a guy that has done so much. I don't know. And it just, to me, it's really annoying. It's irritating, should I say, that that Derek Carr behind the best line in the entire league, arguably, maybe only second to Dallas, right? Yeah. The best offensive line with one of, let's go ahead and, I'm already ready to put Amari Cooper in the elite category, right? With Latavius Murray and a stable of running backs where they can let him go. These guys are not hurting. I mean, I don't know, is that you put Cam Newton on that team, and look, we say this over and over. It's just whiny Cam fans. I know that's what you will call me, but it's just, again, what I'm saying is it's not right. It's not right.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head, man. It's not right.
But you know what is that I said in the story on, you can go to CarolinaCatChronicles.com and check out the story, Where's the Outrage Over the Derek Carr Contract? And I started off by saying my buddy Clip Brock is shaking his head right now because he doesn't buy into this banter about Cam stinking, but he also, I think he's slightly annoyed that it bothers me so much. Right. And it does get to me. It's like pushes my button. All right. Last story before we get up to our ice up picks, Joey, is we talked early in the show about Dave Gettleman saying it's time for the Panthers receivers. In that same story, he says this, Dave Gettleman says, this is what frustrates me with the media today. They go DEFCON 5 on everything. Kelvin Benjamin being overweight was not a big deal. It was April 17th. Can we all get a grip? Right? Now, point taken. All right, this is what the GM says. But Mike Florio actually comes out with a seriously, I think, on the money story. You know, is that Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, Gettleman frustrated by media reaction of Kelvin Benjamin's weight. He refers to this, and he refers to this moment. He says this. He says that Bill Voth curiously, or maybe not curiously, given the Panthers employ him, failed to mention Rivera's words, referring to Rivera saying he was a little heavy. And he goes on to say this. That's the irony of Dave Gettleman's comments and the hypocrisy of the article that came from the Panthers. The head coach told the media Benjamin had gotten fat. What did Gettleman and the Panthers expect? He goes on to say this. Some would say he and they expected exactly what happened. Benjamin had a fire ignited under his enlarged ass. And he got it and the rest of his body into shape. Gettleman essentially conceded that when asked how Benjamin reacted to his mass becoming a meme, you tell me, how do you think he responded? I think Mike Florio, I'm going to tell you this. First of all, I'm distracted reading the story because there's a big old bowl of weed in the advertisement, and it says 3 plants that remove deep fat. And there's a giant bowl of pot. So I'm very distracted by that, and I am very fat. But I love Gettleman, right? And what else is he supposed to say at this point? But I think Florio's right.
I can't argue that. Florio hit the nail on the head too, man.
Is that look, is
Ron
y'all
Rivera is just as guilty as the media on this.
well, you called him out. You did it on purpose. Not
Yeah.
that DEFCON 5 and look, Bill Voth has something to be not accountable for. Like I don't need him to be accountable for anything, but what'd you think when you put up that video of Benjamin in the discussion of him being fat, then running? Of course, this is what the internet does.
Right.
But I do think that Florio is right here, is that Ron Rivera clearly knows that this is how to motivate this guy, right? And this has not been the first time he's called people out publicly. I think it's cool that Florio, I'm with Florio on this one.
Me too.
All right. Joe, that's the end of the show. We got to get our ice up picks on and get the heck out of here an hour and a half later.
I know, right?
Go
we
ahead.
ran over a little bit with
BJ.
Yeah.
What you got for us
tonight goes to former University of Texas quarterback and NCAA champion. Man, I did not want him to win that game, but was it a great game or what? Vince Young. Vince Young, I might sing you up because you did an interview or you wrote a book or something where you basically blamed Jeff Fisher for your failure in the NFL.
Wow.
And that's such a cop-out.
It does suck, though.
The blame belongs to Vince Young. There were countless problems that Vince Young had in the NFL. Because not only did he fail with the Oilers or Titans, but he failed with every other team he went to. So, and is he expecting for those coaches to take the blame for his failures there? Buffalo, Cleveland, everywhere he went, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Saskatchewan in the CFL. Those coaches, does he blame them too? No. So, yes, Jeff Fisher may have had some may have made it difficult for Vince Young. I won't deny that, but it's not Jeff Fisher's fault. So Vince Young, take some responsibility and be a man and ice up, son.
Lots of great comments going down on YouTube. I do want to mention them real quick before we get out here. And Adam Sanders says, easy answer, Tony. Cam is black. I agree. I mean, I wish I could say I disagree, but I don't. He also goes on to say Cam is going to put the haters on notice, which I entirely agree with. So good work, Adam Sanders. My ASAP pick this week goes to at Hannah, HANNAH. So I'm gonna give you her Twitter handle. That's wrong. At Hannah just the letter N, Denver. Now, Cam Newton comes out with the interview and says that, and part of the reason our title is Toss Cam That Lombardi is, he said, look, the only thing missing in my life is a championship. And so at Hannah Bear is her name, and it's Heart, and like if you look at her name, it's Heart Bear, Hannah Bear Heart. Like it's like bookended by these like emojis that are all cutesies. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is her tweet in response to Around the NFL that was quoting that. It will be missing the rest of your career too. Should have dived on that ball, you crybaby ass little bitch.
All right. I saw that tweet.
All right, so this is why. Here's why I'm icing up old Hannah Bear. Other than you coming after my man Cam Newton, If you pull up Hannah Bear's profile, all right, says this: Lady Clone, I enjoy hiking, cars, photography, and camping. Proud MTSU, so a mountain, that's obviously some college she went to, alum. Broncos, Jayhawks, Sooners, Fighting Irish, Lakers, Avalanche, and Cardinals. So to you, I'm icing you up, you freaking front runner bitch. Because you're a Broncos fan, probably after Peyton Manning became one and you got close to the Super Bowl. But you, stupid ass, are a Cardinals fan living in Denver, and you don't have the guts to be a Rockies fan because you a front runner. You a front runner. And I'm going to tell you this, is that you're pulling for the Lakers and the Cardinals. Get your ass, and then you say, I'm an Avalanche fan. Get your ass in Colorado. Get your ass on board with your right teams because you a front runner, biatch. And I tell you, ice up, and the Cubs won damn World Series last year. And that's my ice up. All right. That's the C3 podcast. Sorry for all that outbreak. All right. This is the C3 podcast brought to you by CarolinaCatChronicles.com, where every Tuesday night we chop up the latest Panthers news and opinions from the fan perspective. Joe Riolano, man, it was a blast. Tell them how they can hook up with you.
Guys, you can find me on Twitter at Joe Riolano, RIOLLANO.
All right. My name is Tony Dunn. You can follow me on Twitter at @cat_Chronicles. Look, you see it on the screen right now. Subscribe, share, support. If you're listening later, get on iTunes, get on Stitcher, where you're probably listening already on those. Hit that like button. Go ahead and review us. Share us with a friend. And look, if you really like what you hear, you can check out that link in the show notes. Hook us up on Patreon with $1, just one single dollar, and we'll take it. We'll spend it, and we'll spend it to something devoted to telling Hannah she's a front runner. Until then, we'll see you next Tuesday night, guys.
Good night.